What's going on YouTube? Today I bring you my 2021 season predictions. Um I mean, to be honest, there's gonna be a disagreement on this video. Obviously, I'm gonna have some of your favorite teams, lower than where you like, and maybe I'll have some of your favorite teams higher than what you like. But regardless, these are my official predictions for this season. And hopping into it, starting out with the AFC West, I have the Chiefs winning the AFC at 15-2. I legitimately think the Chiefs have a good shot to go 17-0. I don't think it will happen. I do have them losing a game to the Packers and a game to the Chargers. I feel like, if they're going to lose a game, it's going to be to a really good team or a division rival. And to me, the second best team in the division is the Chargers, and so I have them dropping 2 games. But I do expect the Chiefs to be absolutely dominant. We'll have award predictions and playoff predictions after this in separate videos. Awards and playoffs predictions are in their own video, but we're gonna have those, and I expect you'll see the Chiefs quite a bit in that video. Even though they're not 16 wins, 17 wins, at 15-2, still winning the conference and being dominant as per usual. And then at 12-5, I have the Chargers, who get a wild card spot here. I think that they've got enough there. The defense has a few holes in it for sure, but I really do think that the roster is very talented. I like Brandon Staley as a coach. Really, I think that's the main thing that's going to kind of put the Chargers over that hump is Brandon Staley, because Anthony Lynn just lost so many close games for the Chargers. I think I do trust Staley, even if it's just he's not going to ruin the game offensively for you. He'll at the very least give you a good defensive game. And I just feel like with the Chargers' incredible offensive talent, they still have some amazing talent on defense, especially if they're healthy. A healthy Derwin James could have made all the difference for the Chargers last year, so hopefully he stays healthy. They had some nice additions with guys like Asante Samuel and Rashawn Slater, who I think both of those guys can make an immediate impact for the Chargers. So I just really loved pretty much every move that they made this offseason. They'll be pretty good and make the playoffs, in my opinion. Then third in the AFC West, at 10-7, I have the Denver Broncos. I think the Broncos are going to be vastly improved. To me, they have the second best roster in football if you took away the quarterback position, and it's still top 5 with the quarterback position, probably number 5, maybe 6, 7. The Broncos, there's so much going for them. I mean, to start off, they lost so many guys to injuries last year. And obviously they're going to be getting those guys back. Von Miller, Cortland Sutton being the big names, but there were so many others too. And you're going to be better at quarterback. Like, I don't care what it is. Like, you are going to be better at quarterback, whether it's Drew Lock potentially improving, whether Teddy Bridgewater returns to kind of his 2019 form. Either way, you're going to be better. Add that onto an easy schedule. There's a lot of stuff going on here. The defense could be the best defense in the league next year. I mean, it truly has probably the best secondary we've seen since Denver's other no-fly zone. This might be the no-fly zone 2.0. They're a very, very good roster, and either way, you're going to have your quarterback position improved, and I legitimately think they can make the playoffs. All they need is decent top 20 quarterback play from one guy to make the playoffs, and I think they will improve. I don't know if they'll quite make the playoffs, but 10-7 is obviously much improved. Maybe you find your guy with Teddy Bridgewater or Drew Lock going forward. Maybe you're able to upgrade. Either way, I have the Broncos at 10-7. And then last in the division at 4-13, I have the Raiders. Yeah, I know I'm going to get the Raiders haters. They rhyme for a reason. It's just, I don't see anything special from the team. One excuse that I see a lot of fans using is that the offensive line was never really healthy and stuff. Rodney Hudson played a good majority of games for you, and he's, in my opinion, the best center in football, so that was a massive loss. Gabe Jackson, sure, he didn't play every game, but he was still a great guard for you, and I do think, even though Leatherwood's been fantastic in preseason, he is still a downgrade for the time being, and Leatherwood still was a reach. Your right tackle is going to be Denzel Good, which, sure, he started for you. That didn't mean he was good. To me, it just means that this is your starting line. Like, this isn't even they're at least doing good because they're stepping in for injured guys. This is just your starting line. So what happens if one of those guys go down? You've got no depth. I mean, you've got a decent young guard with John Simpson, but Otherwise, I mean, I expect a little bit of regression from Colton, left tackle. Uh, I expect a little bit of regression from him, just being that the offensive line, Richie Incognito is getting older. You lost a lot of guys, and those guys that used to be your backups are now your starters. It's just not that good. Carr's always been a good quarterback, but it's just when you're now giving him that permanent offensive line that may be even worse during the season if they get hurt as well. I feel like that's gonna disimprove you. I know they have a good running back duo there, but again, offensive line is going to affect that running back duo. Not to mention that at receiver, you kind of downgraded because Nelson Aguilar was really good for the Raiders last year. And if you're going to try to make Henry Ruggs your starter going forward, your number one receiver, I don't like that because I've never been a fan of Ruggs. I think he is just speed and that's it. I truly do think he is the next John Ross. There's some nice depth there with guys like Hunter Renfro, Zay Jones. They signed John Brown and then he requested a release, so you lost John Brown. The offense, I just don't feel it. And the defense, like, yeah, you improved in a few areas, but if you hadn't signed Casey Hayward, that's maybe the worst corner room in the NFL. Yannick Ngakoue is going to put up some consistent stats for you, but I just don't expect it to be a jump to, like, a defense that's going to make this team any better. To me, combined with a hard schedule and maybe the toughest, I mean, I think the toughest is the NFC West, but with probably the second or third toughest division, I just have it all combined to the Raiders stacking up 4 wins. They could certainly win more than that. The offensive line could play good. I just don't see it happening. And then moving on to the AFC South. The Titans at 13-4. I really like the Titans. A lot of people are really banging on their defense, and I don't quite get why. Bud Dupree is a guy that, no, I don't expect him to be as good as he was in Pittsburgh. I still think he'll put up some decent numbers for you. Justifiable for the contract, no, but I think he'll put up some decent numbers. And I do think maybe Bud Dupree could be the guy that finally lets Jeffrey Simmons take that true elite step, because he's always been a great defensive lineman. He's pretty much the only reason their defense wasn't horrible last year. But I think Bud Dupree signing can allow Jeffrey Simmons to kind of take that next step, which is great. You've got a really solid linebacker room, maybe the deepest linebacker room in the NFL. And the secondary is really not that bad. Not that bad. Kevin Byard is still one of the elite safeties in the NFL. I did like some of the pickups that they made. Caleb Farley is a guy that could make an immediate impact if he's healthy. He didn't look fantastic in the preseason, but that's fine because really the big thing with Farley was always the upside. Like, if he stayed healthy, he would turn into an elite corner, and I think that remains true. So for the Titans, I think the defense is banged on a little too much, and the offense is just straight elite. Ryan Tannehill, maybe I hate on him a little bit too much, but he gets the job done, and to me that's enough because you've got the number one running back in the league, and you've got one of the best duos, if not the best wide receiver duo with Julio and A.J. Brown. Tannehill, at the very worst, gets the job done, and he's put up some very impressive numbers, and it's been good for the Titans. You've got an elite offense with, I think, a defense that gets a little bit too much hate, honestly. So I got them at 13-4, winning the division. Colts at 7-10. A lot of people really like them. I've even seen some people who have the Colts above the Titans, and I just think, to me, that's a little ridiculous. Carson Wentz, I just don't believe in anymore. I don't care what he's looked like in preseason. He's not even really played that much in preseason because he's been hurt. Him and Quentin Nelson are supposed to be goes week 1, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're fully healthy or going to play like their normal selves. That's obviously another thing. Quentin Nelson, if he's not 100%, like even a halfway, even a 50% Quentin Nelson is still an elite guard. That's how scary he is. But it would obviously be nice to still have, normal Quentin Nelson, the 1 sack a season guy. There's just a little bit there to where I think it's a tough schedule, first off, but I don't trust Carson Wentz, which I think is going to result in them using, the running game a lot more, obviously. And I do think Jonathan Taylor is going to be great. I think he breaks out, but, the Titans showed for years and years that you can have the best running back in the league, but that's only going to get you so far. I mean, the Titans' ceiling was only ever 9-7 when Derrick Henry was, just blowing the league away with his running ability. And I don't think Jonathan Taylor is Derrick Henry. They got a great offensive line. Receiving weapons, I do like some of their younger guys with guys like Pittman. and Campbell, but when you not going to be throwing to them that much, in my opinion, it just makes them a little not usable. It's the same thing with the tight ends. Luckily, they have some good blocking tight ends. The defense is also a bit of a question mark to me. DeForest Buckner, one of the true elite defensive tackles. I mean, he made a big difference. I've always kind of thought Darius Leonard was a little overrated. He is a fantastic linebacker, but I just feel like he's kind of regressed slowly each year since his fantastic rookie year. And while he's still one of the elite linebackers, I just feel like the contract he got was really just not worth it for a linebacker, and especially, in my opinion, not even a top five linebacker. Uh, Xavier Rhodes enjoyed a really nice year last year, but I don't think he replicates that. And their safety room is not looking very good. They had like one good safety in preseason, some rookie, and they cut him. So safety is not looking good. I don't think corner is going to be as good because I don't expect Rocky Cinder to break out. I think Rhodes probably regresses a little bit. Um, there's just a lot of stuff here to where I like certain things. I like the coaching. I like the run game, but that's only going to get you so far with a tough schedule and the Titans in your division. I have the Colts coming in at 7-10. Then the Jaguars at 3-14. The Jaguars are a really interesting team because we just don't quite know what we're getting from them. Realistically, this is a team that I could see winning as many as 6 or 7 games, but they're also a team that could win as few as one to two. It's just a lot of question marks, really. And Trevor Lawrence, obviously being a question mark, he's a rookie at the end of the day. I do think he'll go on to have a great career, but he's a rookie, and he did, show some rookie-like things in the preseason. And I think people should have expected that. There were some traits that were going to be, abused in the NFL, such as, him staring down targets and stuff. Um, the offensive line's still not very good. They've got some solid interior guys, but they're starting to regress in their own rights. There's a lot of question marks because into here, you didn't really even know who the number one receiver is because a lot of people would immediately point to DJ Chark, but I always viewed Marvin Jones as the number one coming in because he's pretty much had better numbers for the most part as Detroit's number two than Chark as Jacksonville's number one. And I think Trevor Lawrence and Marvin Jones are a great thing, so you don't even really know who your number one is. Tight end's always been a bit of an issue with the Jaguars. Rip to Tim Tebow. And then on the defensive side, I like it, but once again, question marks. Can Kalavon Chason be a good pass rusher for the Jaguars? I think at this point, Shaquille Griffin's actually gotten a little bit overrated because he's not really that good. And so there's just so many question marks to where I'm just gonna put him right in the middle for right now. I think they'll win a few games, but I just don't see them winning that many. I think it's going to be a tough first year, but they'll get things going. They have a very bright future ahead. I just don't see anything from them this year. And yes, I have the Texans going 0-17. I think, now that it's pretty much confirmed Deshaun Watson is going to just be sitting out this year or traded at some point during the season. Either way, Deshaun Watson's not playing for them. And I just think when you look at a team that was 3-13 with, in my opinion, the number three quarterback in the league. Well, now that you're moving from the number three quarterback to the number 32 quarterback, in my opinion, I don't see much hope for them to really win anything. I think the one winnable game on their record is Week 1 against the Jaguars, and I have the Jaguars winning that game because the Texans, it's a god awful roster. The best player on your roster is a left tackle who is being vastly overpaid and was a bad deal to begin with. And I wouldn't even call him elite at this point. Um, Brandon Cooks was a good receiver for you last year, but part of that's because Deshaun Watson was so godly. I mean, again, just the fact that Deshaun Watson put up the numbers he did on this god awful roster, and they were only 3-13. I don't have much hope or reason to believe why they would win a single game this year. So I think we'll have our first 0-17 team this year because they're just bad. I don't like David Culley as a coach. I don't think they have a culture here. They've got no direction, really. I mean, there's probably going to be points in the season where you might be starting, Davis Mills or if they sign Cam Newton. I feel like it's going to be a rotating quarterback room. There's just so many different things here to where I just don't see them winning a game this year, honestly. And then moving on to the AFC East, Bills at 14-3, making the playoffs, obviously winning the division. I think the Bills got a lot going for them. Again, obviously elite passing attack. I feel like Zach Moss could get going this year, which would give them a bit more of a legitimate run game. Mainly the defense is the reason why I have them kind of sticking up here in this elite level. Greg Rousseau looked great in preseason, and he always had that really high potential. Still don't know if he'll necessarily replicate it in his career, but Greg Rousseau is still an interesting guy. Boogie Basham was a nice pickup as well. I think the defense is just going to be better, to be honest. I mean, you upgraded your pass rush. You signed some of your guys, such as Matt Milano. Tre'Davious White's still one of the elite corners in the NFL. Teron Johnson showed a bit of potential in the playoffs last year, so potentially you have a nice number 2 there with Buffalo. I just think there's a lot of stuff to like. I don't think the defense will be as bad as it was last year, and it wasn't really bad. I mean, obviously they still won 13, 14 games. But I think they'll stick right around that level. Maybe expect a little, not expect, but maybe you could see a little bit of regression from Josh Allen. I don't think it will happen, but I wouldn't be surprised if it does happen. If it does, I feel like that defense will balance it out. Either way, I still see the Bills winning 13, 14 games. Here they go 14-3 and make the playoffs. And then the Patriots at 12-5, also making the playoffs. I mean, look at what Bill Belichick did with the roster he had last year. I mean, they went 7-9 with Cam Newton, and mind you, Cam Newton was pretty bad. They had guys like Patrick Chung, Dante Hightower. They just had so many guys out that it was pretty ridiculous that Bill Belichick still managed to go 7-9 with that roster. Unless I'm getting it mixed up and it was 9-7, but I'm pretty sure it was 7-9. And then Bill Belichick went out and just completely overhauled the entire roster. I mean, you got your quarterback of the future with Mac Jones, who I still think was a really nice pickup, and obviously by preseason he showed that he was an NFL-ready quarterback, and I always thought he was probably the most NFL-ready prospect I'd ever seen, so I really liked that pickup. Ramondre Stevenson might have been a steal for the Patriots in the 5th round. He looked absolutely dominant in the preseason. They picked up Nelson Aguilar, who, like I said, was fantastic for the Raiders last year, so that was a great pickup. They signed Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith, 2 great tight ends. One's a top 5 tight end, in my opinion. They kept the offensive line great. The offensive line really doesn't have a single bad player on it. Trent Brown's the one question mark if he can stay healthy, but still in great depth across the offensive line as well. And then on defense, you brought in guys like Jalen Mills, Matthew Judon. They drafted Cameron McGrone, who I thought was a really nice fit for this defense. It's just across the board, they upgraded or stayed the same at every position. And don't forget, this is Bill Belichick we're talking about. Add that onto the fact that Mac Jones can make such an immediate impact, and I definitely think he will be better than Cam. I got the Patriots going 12-5 and making the playoffs. Then in the 3rd in AFC East, I got the Dolphins at 8-9. I expect regression. I don't think Tua's the guy. I've never been a Tua guy, and I just feel like it might show this year. They still don't have a running back. Myles Gaskin puts up numbers because they have to lean on him so much because Tua is so inconsistent. And the unfortunate part is that, if Tua is going to have those games where he has to be pulled out again, which is not a good sign going into his 2nd year, now you're going from Ryan Fitzpatrick to Jacoby Brissett. I mean, Ryan Fitzpatrick's nothing special, obviously, but I would rather have him than Jacoby Brissett, just personally. The offensive line is still a big concern. They drafted Eichenberg, but it doesn't really seem like he's going to be starting, which I was hoping he might, but, so offensive line's still not doing very good. On the defense, they just really didn't upgrade anywhere. They gave Jerome Baker way bigger contract than he deserved. They at least didn't end up trading Xavier Howard, which was a big W for them, but still, you didn't upgrade really. I did love the pickup of Jalen Phillips. I do think if Jalen Phillips stays healthy, he will be an elite pass rusher in this league, but he might, he didn't deal with any injuries last year, so let's hope that keeps going on. He's not necessarily an immediate impact for the Dolphins, but he does have that potential for sure. I just think, once again, tough schedule. I just don't feel like they upgraded. The offense is still definitely a concern to me. I don't think Tua is that guy. They upgraded in a few places. Receiver got a little bit better. I mean, Will Fuller's great if he stays on the field. Jalen Waddle's great, as long as he's not just speed. I don't think he is, but either way, to me, I think the Dolphins regress, and I got them at 8-9. And then the Jets, last in the division at 6-11. I think people are underrating the Jets a bit too much. I really like the roster. I think Zach Wilson, he had a great preseason. I don't know if he'll be like rookie of the year, but I think he can make kind of that impact year one, and will at least be in the running for rookie of the year. I think he'll be great. I like the running back duo. Maybe it comes off as a bit more of one of the weaker rooms, but Michael Carter showed some nice things, and I always liked him. I think they're trying to use him in a bit more in the right way, of making him more of the receiving back, while Tevin Coleman's a bit more of the running back, and I like that. That's the correct way to do it. So I think they did that nicely. Corey Davis looked really good. I was always a bit concerned of whether he was deserving of a contract. I really thought he would stay in Tennessee for another year, but they gave him a contract and it was worth it. So the offensive line is pretty vastly improved compared to a couple seasons ago. Mekhi Becton's only going to get better. I did like EVT. I thought he was worth the top 15 pick, while many others didn't. And I don't know if he was worth trading up for necessarily, but he was a nice, versatile type guy to add to the line. So I mean that's better, that's improved. Now the defense is definitely where the concern comes in, because I like the offense. The team as a whole is very young and nice, but the defense gives a bit of concerns. They lost Carl Lawson for the year, which is not good. Obviously, that's a big hit to their pass rush. However, they still have one of the better defensive lines in the NFL. Fatukasi, one of the best run defenders in the NFL. Some nice depth there with guys like Sheldon Rankins and others. And they've still got some decent guys there, although Carl Lawson is a big hit. At linebacker, CJ Mosley's starting to regress. He didn't play last year, so I don't expect him to come back really that good or anything. They're using Nasir Adderley at linebacker apparently, which is a bit of an interesting use. I was a little bit, I was curious about how they were going to use him. I didn't know if Robert Saleh was exactly the type of guy for Nasir al-Din, but I think they're using him properly, because he is that kind of safety linebacker hybrid type guy. So that's nice to see. Safety is looking pretty good. Marcus May had a really good year last year, and I've always liked Ashton Davis, so I think he can step in and do something good this year. The big concern is obviously cornerback. There's not much there. Bryce Hall is probably your number one, and that's maybe the worst number one in the NFL. And there's just not much behind that. They let go of Lamar Jackson, which I thought was an intriguing developmental guy from Nebraska. There's no one else there. So the defense is definitely where the concern comes from. I like the offense. It's young and a lot of potential across the board, not just the offense, but losing Lawson, the linebacker getting older, corner there being nothing. Marcus May on the last year of his contract, and it doesn't sound like they're willing to work with him to bring him back. The defense, not only does it not look good right now, but it also doesn't look very good for the future. So that is definitely going to be a point of concern and a place to improve after this season. But either way, altogether, I got the Jets at 6-11. I still think people are underrating them a bit too much, because that offense should be pretty explosive. But either way, 6-11. And then last in the AFC, at the AFC North, I got the Browns at 14-3, winning the division and going to the playoffs once again. I think the Browns have one of the best rosters in football. It's pretty spectacular. I mean, really the only quote holes is defensive end, kinda, because Myles Garrett, obviously, it's Myles Garrett. Across from him, not that good right now or for the future. And defensive tackle has nice depth, but there's not really a game changer there. Otherwise, this entire roster is completely stacked, and so this Browns team is going to be pretty scary. Kevin Stefanski was the right coach for them, so I got them going 14-3. Ravens at 13-4, just a game behind the Browns. I just feel like they're a little bit less weak. I feel like Lamar Jackson is at his peak, just in terms of talent. Now, if he can develop as a passer, that's fantastic, obviously. And I hope that they try to do that because they do have some nice receivers on this roster. Sammy Watkins can still be a solid contributor. I really like Rashad Bateman. Hopefully, he gets healthy. Devin Duvernay showed some decent things last year. Tylan Wallace has a whole bunch of upside. They've got some solid receivers, and not to mention Mark Andrews, and as well as also a fantastic pass catcher, but also a great tight end in general, blocking and stuff. Offensive line is great. They could improve in the interior, but again, assuming he gets healthy, Ben Cleveland, very strong guy that could be a starter for them sometime soon. They got Ronnie Stanley back, so that's a great addition, obviously. Defense, it's getting older. They had to upgrade at pass rusher, so they picked up Adafio away. Calais Campbell showed some regression. Derek Wolfe is older. Pernell McPhee, they let go of him on waivers, and they took that risk, so obviously they don't like him that much. But he has always been a solid contributor to the Ravens. Linebacker, they got some nice guys there. They did lose LJ Fort for the year to an ACL, but that's fine because it's not fine, but I do like the potential of Malik. What was it? Malik last name. I like the potential of him as a guy. Malik Harrison, I think he could be a really solid guy and could kind of be that replacement for the future. Patrick Queen should have a pretty solid second year. Still got one of the best corner rooms, probably the best corner room. Only other team really, competing against that is the Broncos. I wouldn't say best secondary just because safety's not very good. Your starters are probably Geno Stone, I do like as a potential guy, but I don't think he'll really end up being much. I'm forgetting their names right now. Chuck Clark's one of them. He's not very good, and then the other guy starting is I can't remember his name, but he's not very good either. I think he at least holds a bit more potential than Chuck Clark, but I just don't view him as being the safety for the Ravens either. So defense is kind of what brings them down to second in the division. Just aging, a couple holes on the defense actually. But overall, it's still a scary elite team. John Harbaugh is still one of the better coaches in the NFL. They will still be elite. I just feel like Browns winning the division this year just feels better to me. But they're still making the playoffs at 13-4, still a great record, but just not winning the division. And then the Steelers at 6-11. I think the Steelers have their first losing season of the last, almost 2 decades. I know for a fact that they've gone a decade without a losing season. I don't believe in the Steelers. People are starting to kind of get a bit high on them again, but I don't see it. Like, Big Ben, the big reason for me is I feel like we're going to see the end of last season's Steelers. And the end of last season's Steelers was not a very good team. Big Ben looked far past his prime. The running game, I love Najee Harris, both as a player and a person. I think he's going to be fantastic for the Steelers. But I don't think year one he's really going to do all that much just because the offensive line is still a big concern. Now, given that the offensive line did play better than people, including myself, expected them to play, I still don't think they'll be very good. Kevin Dotson looks like an absolute steal of a pick, and I did like Kendrick Green. He played nice at times. There are some okay pieces and some nice developmental guys, but this year I don't think they're going to really do much. Which is going to make it tough for Najee to get going. Going from an Alabama offensive line to this offensive line is going to be a big adjustment, although he does look great. The receivers with Pittsburgh is really solid. Juju, has always been a bit overrated since that one good season he had. But Deontay Johnson, to me, is the number one guy because he's fantastic. He's just got to clean up those drops. But he'll be great. Chase Claypool was also fantastic, and you got some nice other guys there with James Washington and Raymond Cloud. The defense still going to be elite as ever. TJ Watt, has been arguably the best pass rusher in the NFL the last couple years, and I don't think he'll be quite on that same level this year, but he will still be fantastic, obviously. Cam Hayward getting a little bit older, but still a dominant force. Stephon Tuitt, I'm not sure what we'll see from him this year. I don't think he'll be better than he was last year, but he could be on that same level, which would be great. Tyson Alualu back, and that's a nice pickup for them there. I guess technically they never lost him, but they kind of did. So they replaced Bud Dupree with Melvin Ingram. which I think for right now is an upgrade a little bit, but long term, I don't see it as that much of an upgrade. Ingram's already like I want to say 33, so I don't expect him to hold that high a play. I think you might get one good year from him, and then he might die off a little bit in play. Linebacker took a bit of a hit when they lost Robert Spillane. He was one of the main play callers and was a really solid linebacker. So now you're moving to Devin Bush, and they lost Avery Williamson as well. But then they traded for Joe Schobert, and that was actually a really solid move. I don't think he'll be quite the same player Spillane was. He's a bit more talented, but obviously the pass rush will help him out. So I think you did upgrade at linebacker a little bit there, but still losing Spillane hurt. The big issue with this team, well, I mean, the offense is the big issue, but the big issue for me on defense is the fact that their secondary is not very good, and it only plays good because of the pass rush. If you look at corner, Joe Hayden is getting older, and they're going to give him an extension and stuff, but I just don't think he's going to be worth what they're going to end up paying him. He's just not worth that to me. There's not a number two corner there. They lost Steven Nelson and another guy that I'm struggling to forget the name of right now. They don't have much there. Cameron Sutton has a bit of potential. I just don't really see anyone else that could really end up being a surprise guy for them, which is an issue. Even with the best pass rush in football, you still want to have at least decent corners, and they've got one decent one, and the rest just really aren't that to me. At strong safety, Terrell Edmonds, he's fine. Again, I think his play gets elevated because of the pass rush, but he's just not that good a safety on his own. And here's the hot take of the video. I just don't think Minka's top 5. Like, I think he's top 10. He is still a good ball hawk safety, but to me, the people saying that he's like the number one safety, and some people who say like he's the number one safety easily, to me is just kind of ridiculous. I don't think he's that good, and he's played close to that level because again, the pass rush, but still, I don't view him as that elite as some others. So that's my quote issue with the defense is just that the secondary could be better. They should definitely try upgrading there soon. It doesn't matter all that much when you have such a ferocious pass rush. But the big issue, again, coming from the offense, I mean, you can win championships with defense. I still think that you can. Even in today's, elite offense league, I think you can win championships with defense, but you got to have at least somewhat of a capable offense. And to me, just with Big Ben regressing and the offensive line still not going to be very good, I just feel like that's enough for me. In a very tough division and with a very tough schedule, I have the Steelers at 6-11. And then last in the division at 3-14, I have the Bengals. I really want to have them be better than they are. I just can't, though. The offensive line is still an issue. I will keep saying it until the day that until the day that Jamar Chase is a Hall of Famer and Penei Sewell is not. I'm always going to say that Penei Sewell should have been the pick. And I'm not just basing that off of this preseason. Neither of them was fantastic. Jamar Chase was pretty bad, to be honest. I still think Penei Sewell will end up being a Hall of Famer someday, and I just don't see that from Jamar Chase. Joe Burrow looked really uncomfortable in training camp and preseason, which I understand because, the offensive line is still not any better, but he definitely looked affected. Like, he hasn't totally gotten over the ACL tear, which is not a good sign. Joe Mixon, I do like Joe Mixon, and I think he would be great, but the offensive line, again, just a big issue. It's even worse run blocking offensive line than it is pass blocking somehow. Receiving room is great. I mean, even just a depth guy like Auden Tate is pretty solid to have, but you have a solid unit there with Tyler Boyd, maybe the best slot receiver in football, and T. Higgins was great last year. Jamar Chase has been pretty disappointing in preseason. Now, his main issue came from the drops. His route running still looked good. Like, physical traits were still there, but the drops were a big issue. I mean, I think he had like 6 drops in 3 games, which is... rookie receivers often struggle with catching. Jerry Jeudy had that last year, and I think he'll be fine. But when you have 6 drops in 3 games, that is definitely a little bit concerning. So the offense is a bit of a concern to me. Add on to the fact that the defense played relatively well compared to what I was expecting from them. They lost Asai for the year, Joseph Asai, which was not good. They still really don't have anyone on the pass rush. I don't think Trey Hendrickson is ever going to live up to his contract. A lot of people are high on Sam Hubbard since they gave him an extension. I just don't think he'll do much either. They let go of Geno Atkins, who wasn't doing much for them at this point anymore, but still, I mean, he could have been a nice depth player for them. At linebacker, they do have some solid guys. I do like Logan Wilson. I do like Jermaine Pratt. I think those are solid guys, but could be a little bit better. And at corner, they lost William Jackson, which is another big loss because well, I guess really their main big loss this season, because I loved William Jackson. He was a fantastic corner for them for the last couple years there, and Washington got a great addition. It's going to be bad watching them go from William Jackson to probably. I mean, there's been a lot of buzz of Darius Phillips, who has shown some flashes, yes, but I just don't think he's a starting cornerback, especially not this year. I really just don't see that many guys that I really like there. And so it kind of turns into, again, one of the lesser good corner rooms in the NFL. Von Bell is a solid safety. Jesse Bates was fantastic last year, but he's one of those guys to where I don't feel all that confident in he will do it again. I do need to see him do it again in order to kind of give him that credit to be like, oh yeah, well they got Jesse Bates, so they're fine. I do think he will be great, but I need to see it first to kind of attribute it to be like, well, they got Jesse Bates. So yeah, it's just there's a lot of concern across the board. Offensive line still horrible. That's going to affect the rest of the offense. And Joe Burrow not looking very confident in himself is not a good sign. Jamar Chase did not look good. And the defense, I still don't expect to be that good, even though they played a bit better than I expected. There's still not a lot to be confident in. Zach Taylor, still one of the worst coaches in the NFL. I don't feel very confident in the Bengals, and that's why I have them at 4th in the AFC North and 3-14. And kicking it off here in the NFC, starting off with the NFC West, I've got the Rams winning the division at 13-4. I really expect this Rams team to be good. I mean, you kick it all off with the fact that Sean McVay is an offensive genius. And if you look at the upgrade of Jared Goff to Matthew Stafford, this team's going to be so much better. Jared Goff was a quarterback that was okay, but he was put into one of the best offensive systems in the NFL, and was basically developed under that. Now you're giving them Matthew Stafford, who, in my opinion, has always been a top 10 quarterback since not entering the league, obviously, but he's always been a great quarterback since coming into the league. He was just stuck on a putrid Lions team, and he was consistently putting up some of the best numbers with, for a while he had Megatron, but he was still putting up some of the best numbers with bad receivers in a horrible offensive scheme with bad head coaches, and was somehow finding ways to win games, and even went to the playoffs once with really bad defenses. And now you're giving him last year the best defense in the NFL, one of the best offensive schemes with some of the best offensive weapons. Why wouldn't this team be great? Matthew Stafford is an elite quarterback that's just always been stuck on a bad team. Losing Cam Akers and Darrell Henderson for a little bit hurts, but they picked up Sony Michel, and I liked Jake Funk, by the way, too, because he has a little bit of potential, but I think Sony Michel was a perfect pickup, too. Like, he fits the scheme very well, and he can be that pass-catching guy for Matt Stafford. You got some great receivers, one of the best duos with Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods, who I think will both take jumps. I actually think Matt Stafford could be good enough to be in the MVP conversation, because truly I think it's going to be that big a difference. Really, he's just now entering his prime as a quarterback. He could be even better than he's ever been, and that's just scary, considering this defense doesn't really need to be talked about all that much. You've got the best defensive player in the league right now with Aaron Donald, just an absolutely dominant player. There's no need to talk about him. And then Jalen Ramsey, who in my opinion is the best corner in football right now. Add on to that some other solid players. Losing Brandon Staley hurts for sure, and there were a couple losses, but either way, I think Darius Williams and Jalen Ramsey make up probably the best duo in the NFL, because I think they're both top 10 corners. Darius Williams, one of the most underrated players in football. Defense is still elite. The jump from Goff to Matthew Stafford is just irrescribable. Um, I expect the Rams to be really good this year, even in the league's hardest division. And then at 12-5, 49ers also making the playoffs. I think the 49ers are going to be pretty good this year. Jimmy Garoppolo's always been the guy that's like the get the job done guy, but he's not exactly had the offense in San Francisco to quote get it done. He's always had a solid running back room. The 49ers have always had great running backs and very deep running back rooms. Raheem Mostert, pretty speedy guy, and he's not just a speed like some people think. Um, what was it? Jeff Gordon, I think it was his name. He had some really interesting games last year where when he stepped in, he was really good. So they brought him back, so he's interesting. They just got a nice deep running back room. I think Brandon Ayuk could take that leap, especially if Trey Lance comes in and plays well in his first year. Brandon Ayuk could kind of step into that top 15, top 10 receiver conversation. George Kittle obviously returning is a big thing, and that was the thing with the 49ers last year is they were completely ravaged by injuries. George Kittle and Nick Bosa being the big obvious ones. But the rest of the roster is just looking really good for the 49ers. The defense is still going to be scary. Now, Richard Sherman was a big loss, but if he can stay healthy, Jason Verrett should finally be able to show that he was always a good corner, just unable to stay healthy. So that would be a big plus for them. But great depth across the board, and I got them coming back from the bottom of the division and going 12-5. And then the third team, the only division in the NFL next year, in my opinion, to have 3 playoff teams. In third place is the Seahawks with a 10-7 record. Originally, I felt like the Seahawks had the weakest roster in the NFL, or not in the NFL, not far from the NFL, in the NFC West. But I think I've kind of moved more to the Cardinals being in that role. The Seahawks, while I am still concerned about their defense, they at least do have some playmakers. I do expect Jamal Adams to bounce back a little bit. Bobby Wagner's still elite. And they do have some nice young pieces, a couple of which I do think will break out. The main thing for me was when I compared the two teams, the Cardinals' lack of corner, especially after Malcolm Butler retiring, it's bad. I mean, the Seahawks corner room is not much better, but the offense is probably better. I think Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins will make up for a great duo next year, but the Seahawks have Russell Wilson, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, some great depth beyond there. And to me, I just ended up feeling like, the Seahawks are going to get those wins over the Cardinals, and that's ultimately what brought them here to being a couple wins above the Cardinals, who I do still love. I think they'll have a great future, but I think there's a few holes that they definitely need to be patched up, and I don't think Cliff Kingsbury is the guy going forward. So even at 8-9, I could very likely see Kingsbury being fired, and the Seahawks making yet another playoffs under Russell Wilson. So yeah, and again with the Cardinals 8-9, it's just they have a bit of a tougher schedule. I love the offense, but there are still just a few concerns on the roster. Corner is in a bad place right now. The future looks very promising for them, but right now I can't have them making the playoffs quite yet, unfortunately, even though I do love it. And then moving on to the NFC South. In my opinion, the best team in football next year is going to be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 16-1. I just feel like with the Buccaneers, you have the best roster in football, in my opinion. You have incredible depth, incredible young talent, incredible experienced talent, a pretty easy roster, maybe the best coaching staff in football, and you're in one of the easier divisions. Plus, you're not going to have to wait for Tom Brady to get adjusted to his receivers and stuff this year. I wouldn't be surprised if the Buccaneers go 17-0. This team has literally all cylinders running and more for them. I just don't see them losing very many games. I'd say their floor is probably 13, 14 games unless they get ravaged by injuries. That shows you how good this Buccaneers team really is. So I have them winning the conference, and then not another playoff team in the division. Saints at 9-8. I like the Saints. There are a lot of great pieces on the team, but I'm just not sure how well it's all going to come together in the end. Jameis Winston looked good in preseason. I still don't think he's the guy. I really do think, even though he had a really weak arm there at the end, I think this team is going to miss Drew Brees. And because they've set that offense up to kind of play around a guy like Drew Brees, going from Brees to Winston is the complete opposite. So unless they can just do a complete 180 and, all of a sudden turn from a safe, slow moving offense to a big chunk play offense. Um, I just don't see them doing that well this year and missing the playoffs for the first time in a while. Combine that with the fact that the defense isn't exactly a defense that's meant to keep you in ball games. It's more of the big play type defense. I don't think that meshes well. Big play defenses with big play offenses just don't really work that well. And so that's another thing. They have no receiving threats. Marquez Callaway has looked decent, but he's just not. He's not going to be Michael Thomas. Kamara should be fantastic. I just don't believe in Winston or Hill to be the quarterbacks of the future here. Cornerback was a big concern. They patched it up with a few guys. Mainly Brian Poole being the one big addition. It's better, but I feel like a lot of this team is kind of patch jobs, to be honest. I mean, they hastily brought in a few receivers, they brought in a few corners because they were very weak positions, and I just don't think that's going to end up working good for them in the end. Sean Payton is a great coach, and they have a lot of great talent on this roster, but I could see them making the playoffs, but I just don't think they will. And then the Panthers at 5-12. I don't think the Panthers are going to be any better than they were, to be honest. The fact that they have the exact same record without Christian McCaffrey, I just don't view him as being that big of a game changer to be coming back. Like, he in his own right is still a fantastic player, but I just don't feel like his, the way he plays and the stat padding that he kind of does, not that he's going out to be a stat padder, but he just kind of is, doesn't really translate to wins. I view Sam Darnold as a downgrade to Teddy Bridgewater. I know Bridgewater was bad last year, but I don't expect Darnold to be any better, and I don't expect him to be the future of the Panthers. They've got some great offensive weapons with DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson. But again, I view Darnold as a downgrade, and so you're probably going to get, similar to a little bit lesser good seasons from them. The defense is also potentially scary. It's just kind of, will it all mix together? Brian Burns is a bright young pass rusher. Derek Brown was a great run defender in his first year. They've got some solid players there, especially guys like Jeremy Chin, of course. But there is a few holes on the defense. Linebacker is not very good after letting go or trading to Denzel Perryman after signing him. They got Shaq Thompson, but he's just not all that special. And there's a bit of a hole at strong safety. Justin Burris is probably your starter right now, and he's maybe the worst starting safety in football. And I know a lot of people really love their cornerback room, but I don't. I feel like Dante Jackson is preferably not a number one corner. He's a nice athletic, speedy dude, but he's just, again, preferably not your number one. AJ Boye is out for the first couple games because of suspension, and he's not good. It's not like he's some big addition. He is not a good corner anymore, unless he has a nice bounce back year, but I don't expect it. And a lot of people have been crazily overhyping JC Horn. I don't really like to take the preseason and say this is how a guy's going to do in the regular season. JC Horn was great, sure, and I think he will be a solid rookie, but it's very, very rare for even the best of corners to be good in year one. I mean, Jalen Ramsey is an example of just an extremely rare, talented corner that plays good year one, and I just don't think JC Horn is that. I don't even think Patrick Surtain is that. So I don't expect it. It could happen for sure, but I don't expect it. So I just feel like the Panthers, they're going to get a little better in the future, but I view Darnold as a downgrade. They had the same record without Christian McCaffrey as the year before, when Christian McCaffrey had one of the best single seasons by a running back ever. Just to me, I don't think this team is going to improve that much, especially when you're in the division with the Saints and Buccaneers, who kind of dominate you in pretty much every game. So, and a tough schedule as well. And then the Falcons coming in last at 4-13. Again, I just don't see them doing much better. Kyle Pitts is pretty much just a replacement for Julio Jones, because I think that he'll be similar, honestly, to kind of what Julio was in his last couple years with the Falcons, which, in terms of tight end to receiver relation, obviously, he's not going to quite be Julio, but, he'll be a really good receiver, I think, year one. Matt Ryan, probably going to show a little bit of regression. He is starting to get up there in age a little bit. They brought in Mike Davis, who can be a solid contributor. I just don't think think they're going to use him exactly how the Panthers did, and I think that's how you need to use him. Offensive line, I mean, it's pretty much the same. The defense is still a bit, well, more than a bit worrisome. They still have the worst defensive end room in football. They didn't really upgrade anywhere on defense, to be honest. Cornerback is still definitely going to be an issue. AJ Terrell could take a leap in year 2, but I don't expect it. And the rest of the room is not very good. And you let go of Kazee and Keanu Neal. So your safety room is also not very good now. It's just like they pretty much either stayed the same or got worse in every category. Now they have a few easy games against teams like the Eagles, the Lions, to where I think they can at least win those games. And this should be a high-powered offense once again, but the defense is that bad to where I just view them being basically the same team as well as the Panthers. So that is the NFC South. Moving on to the NFC East, I have Washington winning it again. Similar case to the Broncos. I think if you took away quarterback, they have the best roster in the NFL. But the issue is that their quarterback's not very good. I love me some Fitzmagic, but he's just, he'll win you some games. He will definitely lose you some games. But by that pure factor, I mean, on the days that Ryan Fitzpatrick is clicking, you're going to win those games. Like, the rest of the roster is so extremely talented to where if you get a good day from Fitzpatrick, which is about a top 15 quarterback, I mean, great, that's wins. But I feel like those 6 losses are going to come from, Fitzpatrick being off on those days. I do love Taylor Heineke. I think he holds a bit of potential for Washington in the future, but I don't think he's exactly the guy that's going to lead you to wins necessarily. I mean, they got pretty close against the Buccaneers, but this is a very talented team. I think they showed that in the wild card game. And, I think Washington will be pretty good next year. I think they still win the division, making the playoffs. Not just because of the division they're in this time, though. They have a very respectable record. And then I have the Cowboys at 8 and 9. I think the Cowboys are going to have an extremely high-powered offense. Dak Prescott should rebound very nicely. I do expect Ezekiel Elliott to, I don't know if he'll necessarily regress a bit more, but I think we might see kind of similar to what we've been seeing the last couple years of just this not the same Zeke. And I think we're going to start seeing a lot more Tony Pollard, who I do really like. I think he could be potentially even the starter by year's end. Still have one of the deadliest receiving rooms in the NFL. Amari Cooper, obviously an elite receiver. CeeDee Lamb should be fantastic come year 2. Michael Gallup, still one of the better number 2/3 receivers in the NFL. And the offensive line is great if healthy. Now, Zach Martin's out game 1, so, COVID, that's great. But when they're healthy, they are a great offensive line, which was a big issue for them last year. So that's great. I think the offense alone is going to get you 2, maybe 3, 4 more wins. The issue for the Cowboys with me is still the defense. Dan Quinn's a great defensive mind and all, but I just don't think the defense is going to be that much better. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit better. It's kind of hard to be that bad, especially when you do have some decent talent on the roster. But there's a reason why they've been so bad. And I think, again, they improve a little bit. That gets them a couple more wins. But I just don't view the Cowboys as going to have that good of a defense. I've always thought DeMarcus Lawrence is a little bit overrated. To me, they don't have a clear number 2 as a pass rusher. Gallimore has some potential as a defensive tackle, but has not really shown it yet. At linebacker, they've got a really nice linebacking room, but Jalen Smith has started to decline a little bit. Leighton Vander Esch has never been the same since his rookie year. Although I do love Micah Parsons. I think he'll be great for them. The secondary is not very good because, they brought over Kazee, obviously with Dan Quinn and everything. I think he should be fine. He'll be a bit of an upgrade. Donovan Wilson has played really solid for them. I think he could take a jump, but I just don't think he'll take a jump. There's a lot of guys on this defense that could be good. I just don't think they will. Trevon Diggs is one of the lesser good starting corners in the NFL. You don't really have anyone alongside him. Nashawn Wright has been a bit of a surprise through preseason, but again, I don't want to judge anything off of preseason all that much. But he has at least been good. He's been better than Kelvin Joseph, who I always thought was a reach. Yes, I just don't view enough here to really view the Cowboys as a playoff contender yet. I do think they'll be better than last season. I mean, getting Dak Prescott back, being healthy, defense will be better. I think at the very least they win a couple more games. Really, I think 8-9 is the Cowboys' floor because that defense is potentially scary and the offense is already elite. But I just feel like that's the Cowboys' thing, is to kind of hit their floor every year. So I have them at 8-9. Giants at 5-12. Again, I just view a similar season. They upgraded in some spots, but it really doesn't matter because of other circumstances. I don't think Daniel Jones is the guy. I was a big believer in Jones for a while, but I've kind of given up hope on that at this point. He's just too scared to attack downfield. And when you have guys like Darius Slayton, Kenny Galladay, Kadarius Toney, that's what you need to do, is attack downfield. This is the exact perfect team, what I just talked about with with the Saints, to where there's got to be that balance. And I feel like a big play offense mixes better with a stop 'em mentality defense, and that's what the Giants have, is a stop 'em mentality defense, and the entire rest of their offense is set for that big playability. I mean, look at the guys that, like I just named the receivers. Evan Ingram is a big play type guy. Saquon Barkley is Saquon Barkley when he's healthy. But Daniel Jones just does not want to attack downfield, and that's nothing wrong on him. I just think he's in the wrong system, and I feel like this is his last year in New York, which is ultimately the big reason why they're here at 5-12. But the other reason being that I just don't like a lot of the other stuff. I don't like the culture that much in New York, and I don't really like Joe Judge as a head coach, really. I don't think he's the right guy for it. I think if you get yourself a quarterback, this team is vastly improved because they do have a really good defense. I mean, Leonard Williams was fantastic last year. They lost Dalvin Tomlinson. They picked up Azeez Ojulari, who was one of my favorite prospects. I think he'll be great for them. I think their secondary is a little bit overrated, but it still is pretty good, and it's helped out by a pretty good pass rush. Again, I just feel like their defense isn't quite on that level to like win them 8 to 10 games, like say the Broncos or Washington is. And Daniel Jones, I think he could be a good quarterback, but he's just in the wrong system. So I think you need to go get yourself a guy who's willing to chuck it downfield, make those big plays, and then this is a scary team. But for right now, I have them at 5-12. And then the Eagles at 1-16. I just don't think they're going to be good. Like on paper, they have a very talented roster, but that's on paper because there's so many other factors to this team where I just don't think they're going to be good. Realistically, if things went right for the Eagles, they could very well be a playoff team. But I just don't think anything's going to go right. Jalen Hurts, you're hoping, can be your guy, and I don't think the Eagles even want him to be their guy, so I don't really think that's going to end up happening. I don't like the running back room in Philadelphia. I never really liked Miles Sanders. Their receiving unit is still not good. I'm not a fan of Devontae Smith. The offensive line is great, but a few of the guys have had trouble with injuries. The left side is a pretty big concern. Kels is on his contract year, so there's a few issues going on with the Eagles' offensive line right now. And the defense, again, on paper should be great. I mean, you got guys like Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, Darius Slay, but it's all a bunch of big names with horrible talent around them. Fletcher Cox, to me, just isn't the same guy he used to be. Still a great defensive tackle, and Brandon Graham is great, but they just don't mesh enough to where they get that kind of consistent pressure, which doesn't help out a really poor secondary. I mean, Darius Slay was pretty much the only reason that secondary wasn't god-awful last year. Darius Slay is a great corner, but there's just no one else to help him out back there. They picked up Anthony Harris, and I don't think he's really going to be like his 2019 self, honestly. He's just there on a one-year contract. Safety is also not really good. I like Kevon Wallace and a bit of his upside, and I think he could hit it, but I don't know if that'll be enough to necessarily change much in Philadelphia. Add on to the fact that I don't like the culture. Howie Roseman is maybe the worst owner in football. He's not worst. He's not the Lions or Washington's owner, but he's one of the worst owners, and I really honestly feel like Nick Sirianni was a hire to basically just put the blame on somebody else when stuff goes wrong, because I don't feel like the Eagles want to win anymore. They just don't feel like a franchise that wants to go for it, because it doesn't seem like they even have enough faith in some of their own guys. And when I feel like a coach is being hired just to take the blame for stuff, that doesn't give me very much confidence in the team as a whole. So I just feel like while this could be a playoff team, they've got a great roster on paper. I just feel like this is a team that pretty much everything wrong that could go wrong happens to them, and I just expect that to be the case once again this year. So I have the Eagles at 1-16. And then moving on to our last division, the AFC North, I have the Packers at 14-3. I was a lot lower on them back when Aaron Rodgers stuff was going on. But, now that we've kind of got this whole case where, Aaron Rodgers is coming back, this is probably his last year in Green Bay. It's the last dance. I mean, that's what everyone's calling it, because that's basically what it is. I mean, this is one more shot for Aaron Rodgers and the Packers to go get their second Lombardi trophy. And I mean, I think they'll be about as good as they were last year. I was a lot lower on them because, especially, taking away the MVP was going to hurt. But even with the MVP back, I think they did get a little bit worse overall as a team, which is why I have them at the same record. But, one more loss, obviously, 17th game. They got worse along the offensive line. Bakhtiari is out to start off the season, which is not good, obviously. They did lose a few guys. They released Kamal Martin, which was interesting. And I didn't really like their offseason moves. I was a big fan of A.J. Dillon, so I didn't really get paying Aaron Jones all that money when you could have invested somewhere else. Obviously, the stuff they were doing to piss off Aaron Rodgers also didn't make me like their offseason anymore. I wasn't a fan of the picks like Eric Stokes, Josh Myers. I've never been a fan of Packers picks, but Josh Myers will develop into a good offensive lineman at some point. That's just what the Packers do, is they develop guys like that. And I could imagine Eric Stokes being a good corner for them. I just didn't like either one of them coming out of the draft, and I don't think there'll be anything immediately. So I just all around hated their offseason, and to me, it's really lucky for them that they got Aaron Rodgers back. So I think, although they got worse as a roster, I think the receiving unit's at least a bit better. Aaron Rodgers, I don't expect to quite repeat that MVP-like season, but I think with this last dance mentality, just the roster is still one of the better in football. And what I was saying for a while was it's a bunch of top names with lesser depth and at other positions as lesser talent, which I still stick to that. But either way, I think the Packers still go in with that, again, last dance mentality, and I have them at 14-3. Vikings at 12-5. This is going to be a very good football team. They would be much better if not for being in the same division as the Packers. But the Vikings are going to be a good football team. I do not understand why they're being so slept on. Their offense was elite enough last year. Justin Jefferson was obviously amazing. Adam Thielen still at the top of his game. Dalvin Cook, one of the best running backs in the NFL. The offensive line is young and only getting better. Kirk Cousins, I know Vikings fans hate him, but he does get the job done at the end of the day and puts up good numbers. And the big issue, obviously, last season was the defense. Here's the thing. I know Mike Zimmer has made, a few dumb decisions and stuff in the past, but Mike Zimmer is still one of the top defensive coaches. Not to mention, should I list off the names of players that they didn't have at times or for the entire season last year? Because it includes guys like Eric Kendricks, Anthony Barr, Stephen Weatherly. They didn't have Michael Pierce, Dalvin Tomlinson, Sheldon Richardson, Daniil Hunter, who was coming off of in 2 seasons, he had 34 sacks as a defensive end. And the list goes on. This team was ravaged by injuries on the defensive side last year. You're giving them back all of those players now and adding new guys like Patrick Peterson, Rashad Breeland. And you want to talk about those guys, the secondary is going to be much better because Patrick Peterson is moving from a much more complex system in Arizona to a much simpler system in Minnesota. He was pretty bad last year, but I think he's going to have a big rebounding year. And Rashad Breeland has always been one of the more underrated players in the NFL. He does really solid, especially as a number 2. He is great. So the secondary is upgraded. They're getting a whole list of elite players back from injury. Mix that with an elite offense. The Vikings are going to be good, and I don't understand why people are sleeping on them. So I have them at 12-5 and making the playoffs. And then the Bears at 3-14. Yeah, I mean, I've been on this little train for a while now. I don't like the Bears and Justin Fields. I don't feel it. Like, I know this is a very unpopular opinion. I just don't think Justin Fields is the guy for Chicago. I don't think they're the right team for him to go to. I don't think they're going to develop him since he is a boomer bust product to me. He's going from Ohio State, which had this plethora of offensive talent and one of the best offensive lines in football, to the Bears, which doesn't have the best weapons in the world. Allen Robinson might be gone after this year. Um, at Ohio State, there were a lot of times where they were forced to run the ball because Fields just couldn't get it going, and the Bears don't really like to run the ball. Um, the offensive line is less good than it was at Ohio State, that's for sure. And the defense is facing its own issues of its own. Akeem Hicks might be gone after this year. Khalil Mack's still one of the elite, but Roquan Smith was fantastic last year. But it's kind of after that where he gets a little iffy. Danny Trevathan has been solid at times, but he's getting a bit older. And the corner room is kind of destroyed. They let go of Kyle Fuller to sign Andy Dalton. You want to talk about paying a backup $10 million. I mean, Eddie Jackson, hopefully he can kind of rebound. I mean, Chuck Pagano was kind of an embarrassment of a defensive coordinator. So hopefully Eddie Jackson finally gets used right and he can kind of return to his former self. It's just a similar case where I feel like this is the Bears' floor, and I just feel like they hit it. I don't think Matt Nagy's the right coach for this team. I definitely don't think he's the right coach to develop Justin Fields. I don't like Justin Fields as the Bears' quarterback going forward. They've got a lot of holes on their roster. They got some great talent at spots, but it's just, I don't feel it from the Bears, and so I got them going 3-14 in a pretty tough division. And also a tough schedule. And then our last team of the video, the Lions at 1-16. It's just a similar case. There's talent at spots there, but this is a very young team with a coach that's just, we don't really know what we're going to get from Campbell, to be honest. I mean, I think if anyone's got the right mentality and, aggressiveness that this Lions team would need, it's Dan Campbell. But, Jared Goff is going from arguably the best offensive system with some of the best offensive weapons in the NFL to maybe the worst offensive scheme in the NFL and with some of the worst offensive weapons. A lot of people were raving about their offensive line, and I was never really that high on it. Like, there's a lot of potential there. If you watch me, I love Penei Sewell, but I don't think he's going to make that big of an impact year one necessarily. He's definitely having troubles switching from left to right tackle. Taylor Decker's great. Not at Glasgow. He's on the Broncos. Frank Ragnow is great, but the rest of the line is a little iffy. Again, Sewell, left guard. They've got who is their left guard? Not quite sure off the top of my head. I think it's a second-year guy. They let go of Tyrell Crosby, so I'm not exactly sure who'd be starting at right guard right now. Probably the Haipatula, however you say his name, the long name dude. Offense, I just don't feel that confident in. Again, I just don't think Goff is going to be good at all, to be honest, and I just don't feel like he's the right fit. And there's not a lot of good weapons there. I don't think DeAndre Swift is anything special. I don't think he's going to be able to carry an offense by himself. And then if you go on the defense, I mean, obviously the Lions are notorious for having a horrible defense. They've got a few pieces like, Romeo Cora. It was pretty good for them last year, but they picked up Michael Brockers in a trade, which was a good trade for the value they gave up, but still, I just don't expect him to be a game changer or anything. Pass rush in general, just not that good for the Lions. They're a horrible run-stopping team. Maybe Jeff Okudah takes a leap this year. I do think there will be a point where Jeff Okudah will take that leap into an elite corner, but I don't think it's this year. I think wait till next year and then he'll take that leap. Safety room might be the worst safety room in the NFL. Linebacker also definitely sucks. They just don't value it, but doesn't help them obviously. I mean, yeah, it's a pretty poor roster with some bad fits, and I love Dan Campbell, but I don't think he's a good coach. And again, in a tough division with a tough schedule, I wouldn't be surprised if they go 0-17. So I have the Lions going 1-16. So yeah, and then if we take an overall look at the seedings here, number one seeds getting the bye week, Chiefs and Buccaneers. No surprise there for me. I've seen a lot of people high on the Packers, but in the AFC, you got Bills at 2, Browns at 3, Titans at 4, Ravens at 5, Patriots at 6, and Chargers at 7. And then on the NFC side, Packers at 2, Rams at 3, Washington at 4, Vikings at 5, 49ers at 6, and Seahawks at 7. Some interesting matchups here. We'll talk about playoff matchups probably tomorrow. But yeah, I mean, Chiefs Charger, could be Chiefs Chargers, but Bills Chargers should be a good game. Browns Patriots, that's a nice matchup there. Titans Ravens, third year in a row in the wild card. We'll see if who gets the best of each other that game. They're 1-for-1. Packers Seahawks should be a pretty good matchup. Those guys see each other a lot. Seahawks don't have that good of luck in Lambeau. Rams 49ers, the divisional matchup, good to see. And then Washington Vikings should be a very interesting game as well. And that's going to be a great playoffs. And we'll talk about that more tomorrow, like I said. But that is going to be the video, you guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you like the video, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see all you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.